Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session titled How to Actually Get an Impactful Job. This workshop is based on Probably's Good Career Guide and focuses on the practical aspects of applying to high impact roles. The idea is for you to learn how to identify promising roles, craft compelling applications, and avoid common mistakes that derail even strong candidates. And whether you're early in your career or considering a pivot, ideally this session will help you take the next step towards doing the most good with your time and skills. To introduce our speaker, Rocky Schwartz is an advisor and groups lead at Probably Good. She has spent over a decade in social impact, including nonprofit leadership, capacity building, and philanthropic advising. She has helped grow several small nonprofits and funds, and previously led Effective Altruism NYC for 3 years. As a short reminder, if you have questions for speakers, for in this case for Rocky, you can submit them on the Swapcard app, and either Rocky will be responding them live, or I'll be keeping them for the end and answering some of them with Rocky, or have Rocky answer them. Um, and without further ado, please join me in welcoming Rocky to the stage.
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here with all of you today. I'm really just impressed by the number of people who have come together to think about how to have a greater impact on the world. So, yeah, thank you all for being here. Um, we can jump into the presentation. Today we're going to be spending the next about 45 minutes together going through a workshop that's going to be very content heavy, but hopefully will give you some strong foundation for taking the next steps in terms of actually landing an impactful role. So the workshop today, how to actually get an impactful job. This is based off of one of our written guides at Probably Good. If you're not familiar with Probably Good, we are a nonprofit organization within the effective altruism ecosystem. We have a very clear mission of helping you to build a career that is both good for you and good for the world. We go about this in a few different ways. A lot of this is through our very in-depth online resources where we have extensive career advice, profiles on different professional paths and different cause areas, a job board that is now, as of think about a month ago, the largest impact-focused job board in the world, where you can search by all sorts of criteria, including finding roles that are within your specific region. And we offer one-on-one career advising, which I would encourage everyone to consider pursuing after EA Connect today. And outside of running workshops like this, offering these in-depth one-on-one advising sessions are a big part of what I do. You can find out more about this on our website, and I'm also happy to answer any questions about what that process looks like. But I will be plugging our one-on-one advising probably quite a bit during this workshop today. So what will we actually be covering today? This workshop is really focused on three main things. The first is the strategy behind an effective job search. The second is tools for having a strong application and being a strong candidate. And the third is mindset, because the nature of a job search is that you're going to be facing quite a bit of uncertainty, and in almost all cases, you will at some point be facing rejection. So we will be kind of diving into these three ends today. But the thing that I want to emphasize from the get-go is that hiring is messy. We in the effective altruism community try to, in many ways, put order to chaos, numbers to phenomena. But the reality is, most of us, when we're job searching, we're in a state where we're in like, lot of potentially overwhelm or just major questions. So, what does this mean? With job hunting being a weird process, your success is not going to be defined by merit alone. You can be very deserving of a job. You can be, in many cases, actually an extremely strong fit, but there's going to be a lot of other factors involved. These include strategy behind your job search, timing of did you apply for kind of the right role at the right time? Did the right role open up at the right time for you? Fit and how that's understood by both you and a prospective hiring or funding organization. And then finally, luck, because a lot of this really does just come down to kind of these intangibles that we can't really control. So, what does all of that lead to? That leads to taking more of a hypothesis-driven approach to your job search. And we're going to really dive into what that means in just a second. But this is one of the things that I like the most about some of our kind of career ways of seeing careers at Probably Good, taking more of a kind of scientific mindset where we see part of the career search process as part of learning, refining over time. One of the things that we're going to emphasize with this is thinking beyond job titles. Something that we see often is that people will have an approach where they've maybe identified, okay, here's like 1 to 3 job titles that I'm searching for, and I'm going to go to the same job boards consistently. We do love job boards, they're probably good. But I'm going to go to the same job boards consistently, and I'll every time I see one of those titles pop up, I'm going to apply if it seems like it's otherwise a good fit. No, we're not saying not to do that. But I think that limits you to this idea of like looking for a specific job versus finding a job that could actually be a really good match, but might not have been on your radar. So we like to take an approach that's focused on first thinking about what your skills are. Second, thinking about what problems you might be able to solve with those skills. That could be in terms of cause area, but that could be a specific problem within an organization that your skills lend themselves to. And then finally, thinking from there, what are kind of the full range of possible roles that capture those two elements? So one strategy with this can be the reverse job search. Another really fun way to use job boards is just read through a ton of job descriptions, get a sense of what they actually are beyond the title and what the day-to-day really looks like. And I think this can be a really fun way to expand your understanding of work that is happening and also work that you might want to contribute to. So that's going to lead us to the career hypothesis framework. And in just a moment, we'll actually be doing an exercise for you to develop your own career hypothesis. But the idea with a career hypothesis is that you want it to be specific. You want it to be something where if someone is reading it, they could, in theory, think about specific roles that match it. You want it to be plausible for you and your own life, right? If it requires a PhD in a field that you're never going to pursue a PhD in, or requires living in person in a place you're never going to move to, probably not actually a plausible hypothesis for your career. And then finally, you want it to be directional. So often we see people take very winding paths in their career, but you want this to be directionally aimed at kind of that goal of what you actually want to accomplish in the world over time. So I think of these 3 elements as coming together to really account for I am a changing person in a changing world, often a very rapidly changing world, and I can have kind of a best guess of how I might contribute. But I want to be adaptable. I want to take in new information and really kind of refine my sense of what it looks like for me to contribute over time. So the format for this, it might look really simple, but I think sometimes it's the hardest sentence that you will ever write. It is, I could contribute to this problem by using these skills through this type of role or this type of organization. And we're gonna start things off by our first little exercise of the day, expanding your own job search. And we're going to follow this format for the next 5 minutes of filling out, okay, here are my skills, here are the things that I enjoy, which may or may not be the same as my skills. Maybe there's overlap, but not a one-for-one fit. I could take those 2 elements and I could apply them to a certain problem or a certain team, certain project. Job titles that might match that. What do those look like? And try to be pretty expansive there. And then are there maybe 2 to 3 career hypotheses that you can come up with from there? So 5 minutes, not a ton of time for this, but hopefully if you like this exercise, you can continue it on after the workshop today. So I'm going to just set a timer for myself. I'll give you guys a little countdown in the chat. And I also want to encourage you, if you have things that come up from this, please put them in the chat. I'm monitoring it throughout the workshop and happy to respond over text there. Cool. So I hope this was useful. I saw some good questions coming in the chat and want to encourage you all to keep those going and also consider responding to each other there, because I think one of the great things about events like this is you get kind of the hive mind of a really great engaged community that cares about, also addressing big pressing problems in the world. So with all of this, this is going to move us on to kind of the next part of the workshop, which is the idea of oh yeah, the discussion. Yeah, keep the discussion going in the chat. But the idea of moving from chasing jobs to shaping jobs. And one thing that I always like to plug, especially for an EA audience, is that you are in a community that is particularly entrepreneurial and where there are tons of opportunities to actually create your own projects and potentially make them a full-time career. So one thing that you might want to consider doing is actually applying for funding to build your own role. This can look like a lot of different things. This can look like pursuing grants, fellowships, where there are many, many different fellowship opportunities in the community, some of which are designed specifically to support you in spending a dedicated period of time developing your own project. Incubation programs, I believe we'll have a talk later today from Charity Entrepreneurship about their incubation program, and there are many others. So considering tapping into these resources. One smaller way you can begin this now is just designing a project or a small proof of concept. This does not have to be anything big, but it's amazing if it's something that could expand into something bigger. And one particular funding opportunity within this is considering effective altruism funds, which, from what I've seen, their acceptance rate is about 10 to 30%, depending on the fund and their particular funding capacity. So definitely checking them out, seeing types of projects that EA Funds has funded before, and it is an open call. So you can just submit an application, see what happens. So with this in mind, want to kind of move into the idea of how do you actually approach, figuring out where you might want to work. And this might seem really simple, but I think people kind of forget. People really like working with people they like. And when you're at events like this, one of the things that you're doing is kind of scoping out also who you might like, because you should like your coworkers too. And this is part of that mentality shift from chasing to shaping. You don't want to be in a position where you're kind of jumping on the first opportunity that comes your way. You want to be in a position where you're also really evaluating, does this actually feel like a good fit for me? Does this feel like a happy place for me to work? People I want to be working alongside. And this moves us into the idea of why networking matters. And I think a lot of people have a very strong reaction to networking. So before I dive into this slide in full, I want to pause and say, I want to reframe networking. I think networking, we often are thinking of as something salesy or inauthentic. And I want you to think about it more in terms of you clearly have an interest if you are here in doing good in the world. You are hopefully looking to build a long-term commitment to doing good through your career. And especially if there's an area that you're really excited by, hopefully you're also really excited to connect with as many people as possible who care about the same things and are thinking about the same things, and really have that network of people who are kind of your soldiers in arms, so to speak, right? Your allies in trying to make the world better. So that's the mentality shift, right? Like, I care so much about this thing that I want to, know everyone else who is working on this too, know how they think about things, improve my own thinking and my own potential for impact over time. Beyond that, most hires happen through some sort of network touch point. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily, I reached out to this person and I asked for a job and they gave me a job. It is much more of a long game, right? Today's contacts are going to be your future advocates, your future collaborators, people you might also at some point be in a position to hire yourself. So not everything is going to be directly leading to a job. That's totally fine. You're really, again, creating that network where you're going to be well positioned to find people, again, who are doing the type of work you'd be excited to dive in on. And networking is just one strategy among many, right? You're still gonna, be looking at job boards. You're still going to be kind of considering your own projects you might want to work on independently. But this is one kind of tool in your toolbox. And again, with this, it does not need to be salesy. So what does this look like in terms of networking authentically? One big thing is asking for advice over favors. Really trying to understand what people are working on, what they would think, given your background and your skill sets, you could most contribute to. Because there might be things where you talk with someone and they say, oh my gosh, you're the perfect person to solve this problem that no one else is working on yet. You want to do your homework, really understand, what this ecosystem looks like, what the kind of orientation of different organizations is. Two organizations might look very similar on paper, but when you actually are talking with people, you can ask, in-depth questions to understand what is the difference in your theory of change? What is the difference in the kind of day-to-day of your work? And when you're reaching out to people where possible, keeping it brief, being grateful for their time, and making any ask that you're making easy to answer. In the context of an outreach message, which you might be sending quite a lot of this weekend through Swapcard, hopefully you are, a few things to keep in mind. Personalizing. If it looks like it's just a copy pasted message you've sent to 50 people, people are going to be a lot less likely to respond. So, like, mention people's names, mention why you're excited to reach out to them in particular. If possible, have a specific question. Make it clear, like, okay, this is the thing that I would like to talk to you about. This is the type of thing that I think you could, help me answer. Also, keeping it brief, again, like providing context, making it so that they understand very quickly this is why this conversation could be a valuable thing to engage in, and any follow-up, making it easy. So if it's through Swapcard, it's already right there for you. You can just set up a, one-on-one meeting directly there. If it's through a LinkedIn message or, cold outreach email saying, I would love to have a 20-minute call. Here's a scheduling link. Or I would love to even just get a response from you over email on this if you would like to continue this conversation. So our next quick exercise, and we're just going to spend maybe like 2 minutes on this, but I would love for you all to think about a specific question that you would like to ask someone who might be well positioned to answer that question, and what kind of the value proposition for them is. Why might it be valuable for them to actually speak to you about this? So this will hopefully lead to better outreach messages for you. And I'm going to give you just 2 minutes now to kind of fill this out on your end, and you can keep any questions or ideas coming in the chat. Great, cool. So hopefully this was a helpful starting point. And again, I think this is one of those exercises that can be useful to return to over time, because hopefully your questions will evolve, and hopefully the types of people you might be interested in reaching out to will continue to change as you get a greater sense of ways you might want to orient in your career. One thing to keep in mind with this, not everyone you reach out to is going to respond, and that's totally okay. I think we've all had those moments where we've been maybe a little bit behind on responding to messages, or just not had capacity to talk with someone new. So this is a little bit hits based, but you really have nothing to lose. And I think one thing to keep in mind here also is that, to the degree it's a rejection to not have someone want to speak with you, you're again probably going to be facing a lot of maybe more significant rejections in the course of your job search. So this is a good way to get like a little bit of a test run, kind of builds that muscle of I can weather not hearing back, I can weather someone not being excited to talk with me, and kind of get into that mindset of like it's okay, I'm trying to find where there's a good mutual fit. And this is going to lead us into our next idea, which is building targeted serendipity. So serendipity is already this concept of, that kind of like happy happenstance of, oh, I like was in a city I have never been in before and ran into that person I grew up with. What a serendipitous encounter, right? Targeted serendipity, especially in terms of your job search, this is the idea of intentionally putting yourself in environments where these connections, these conversations that you want to have are all the more likely to happen. So hopefully you'll have a little bit of this over the course of the conference this weekend. But what does this look like in practice when you're actually at events, like when you are in a room where you are connected with people who are kind of in the larger ecosystem that you're hoping to move through? So things you can do, you can just ask like really simple questions of what brought you here? What are you thinking about lately? What are you excited by? Kind of really getting a sense of, okay, like what are other people about? What are things that maybe I should be thinking about? You can share also what you're exploring and get other people's thoughts and feedback on it. I think this is a great way to expand your understanding of just, again, like the world, opportunities out there, maybe challenge some of your assumptions. If you're someone where it can be like a little bit overwhelming to go into a new space and try to engage with new people, it can be really helpful to set a specific goal for yourself. Like over the course of EA Connect, I'm going to reach out to just 3 people and try to have one-on-one conversations with them. Or I'm going to go to this in-person event in my city and I'm going to make sure I have, 2 conversations where I actually get someone's name and it feels like we talked about something real before I leave, whether that takes 20 minutes or 2 hours, right? And then where possible, you want to actually follow up, right? Keep that connection ongoing, not have it kind of be like this one and done brief interaction, but something where you've just shown like, I appreciated talking with you, like good to be connected in some format that might be more sustainable beyond where we initially met. So little exercise for you guys, and we'll just spend again about 2 minutes on this. And I really encourage for this one for you guys to put things in the chat, because I think this is one where what's helpful for one person is maybe going to be really helpful for other people. And this is kind of a group brainstorming, but would love for you to spend just a minute or two brainstorming places that you could actually go to create your own targeted serendipity. These could be online platforms, in-person communities, other conferences, maybe even thematic ones, other institutions you might already be connected to, like universities in your area. But if people want to spend just a moment now brainstorming, and yeah, again, really encourage you to put things in the chat on this one. Great. So hopefully you came up with a few ideas. If you found this challenging, or even if you found it easy, I think this is actually something that can be really great to ask for other people's feedback on throughout EA Connect. So if you're speaking with someone who is involved in an area that you're excited by, a great question to ask them in the course of your conversation is something like, what are maybe two rooms that I should make sure I'm in, physical or online? So getting a sense from people who are already plugged in of where you can go to create your own targeted serendipity. And again, encourage you all to keep ideas coming in the chat so that we can have that sort of group brainstorm here too. Now, one element that can really assist with targeted serendipity is also just positioning yourself to be found, really putting up that signpost for people who share your interests that, this is what I'm about. These are the things that I'm interested in. So this can look like building a visible presence through websites like LinkedIn. Doesn't have to be anything super extensive, but just making it clear of like, again, here's my interests, here's my skill sets. Personal websites can be really great for this too. Public projects are another great way. It doesn't, again, have to be anything huge, but just something where you're kind of putting out into the world, this is the type of thing that I enjoy working on. This is the type of thing that I'd be excited to see other people working on similar projects too. Engaging in communities, an EA community is a great one for this, and leveraging institutions. So that could look like, again, kind of maybe universities in your area, alum networks, other types of institutions that you might already have existing connections to. And we're going to transition now into the actual job application end of things. So this is little different end of our workshop, and this is my image of the drowning job applicant who is just overwhelmed by all of the possible jobs that they could apply to. And one kind of key idea with this is we want you to move from this idea of like mass applications being the best strategy to tailored applications. A tool that we have at Probably Good that I really like is our application matrix for deciding on whether it's worth applying to a role. And this looks at a number of variables, but the kind of key thing is where is there a match between the match for you with that role and motivation. So what the role is looking for, what you're looking for in a role, and what you're motivated to actually work on. And the idea of using the matrix, we're trying to avoid kind of the two main failure modes that we see, both with our advisees and with people we have spoken to out in the world. The first is that people are applying to everything, and that leads to burnout. If you're in a situation where you're applying to literally hundreds of roles, you're probably not keeping things as narrow and tailored as will actually be beneficial for you. And it's going to make sense if you are exhausted and feeling demotivated. Or people focus specifically on the perfect fit, and then they miss a lot of great opportunities as a result. And this returns to one of those early concepts we talked about earlier on in this workshop of really thinking beyond job titles, thinking about things that might not be kind of an existing role that you had in mind, but could actually be a really strong fit for your skills and your passions. And with both of these, if either element is low, right? If you are low on motivation, low on match, don't apply. I think it's really just that simple. And if something's kind of more in that middle zone, you want to be really intentional about that. So the kind of the key questions with this are, is this right for me? Does it match my motivations, my goals, the compensation that I need, the logistics of my life, right? If I don't want to move and this role is going to require moving, probably not worth applying. And then am I right for it, right? Like the skills that they're looking for, really like where is there going to be a match there? So again, this is the application matrix, which you can also find through our site. And yeah, everything we're talking about today through our How to Get a Job guide on our website, you can find out more. And with this, we're going to kind of shift now into thinking about things from the other end of things, the hiring manager hat. We're going to put that on now. And one key thing on the hiring manager end of things is that hiring is almost entirely saying no. If you have 100 applicants, you are saying no to 99 of them and yes to one of them, right? So we want to get into a headspace of really thinking like a hiring manager to understand what's going to make us a compelling applicant to a hiring manager. This looks like a few different things. First is like, okay, what does it look like to have to sort through, 100 plus people? And not every role is going to have 100 plus people, but it one way or another, right? You're getting like a ton of materials. You're trying to get a sense of people where maybe some of them you've interacted with before, a lot of them are new names, and you want to kind of think about what is going to make that hiring manager actually pause and say, this is someone where I'm interested in learning more about them. I'm interested in seeing if they could actually be a good fit for this role. So one of those things is just making it obvious what that fit looks like right away, making it obvious, like in a way where they've spent 5 seconds looking at your application and they understand this is someone where there is potential for a strong fit here. You want to preempt any concerns. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in just a moment. But if there's anything that could lead to a quick rejection, really actually like acknowledging it and figuring out how to make it so it doesn't seem as much like a concern. And then where possible and where useful, you might want to actually include links to external kind of proofs of concept, ways of showing that you are someone who like gets things done, who is going to be an exciting addition to their team. And all of this leads to this idea of making it easy for a hiring manager to say like, yes, this is someone again where I want to advance them to the next stage of that process. On the common concerns front, this is another one that I think is really good to talk about in one-on-one advising because it's going to be very specific to your situation. But some common things that we see. One is people who are switching fields. And I think that people are often kind of intimidated by how to frame this. But the kind of key thing here is having a clear narrative. I have been, working in for-profit companies for the past X years, developed these skills that now I'm looking to apply to an organization focused on this cause that I'm passionate about. So making it so that it's a very clear narrative of, this isn't like a random application. This is part of an intentional step that I'm taking to bring my skill set from one domain to another. If you have resume gaps, totally okay. This is common. You might want to acknowledge this depending on what it looks like. I've seen people sometimes put things like, career sabbatical on their CV, or even just like directly explain what happened there of like, had a baby, cared for a relative, like traveled and took some courses, right? Like making it clear of like, okay, this was something that like, isn't a concern. This was maybe intentional or at least, in some way maybe productive life step. If you've changed jobs frequently, being able to frame that, making it clear that, in this next role, if this is one where they're looking for a long-term commitment, you're looking to make a long-term commitment too. That past roles, you've explored a lot intentionally, and now you're looking to really focus on one of the areas that you've identified as, a strong long-term match for you. If you don't have formal credentials, also totally fine, depending on the role. Making it clear of, what you've been able to learn actually like in the field, in the real world. This is one where I think it's really helpful to get a sense of like how important the formal credentials actually are. If literally everyone else in that organization or in that type of role has a certain degree that you don't have, be a strong indication that you actually do need that degree. But for other things like, I taught myself how to code versus, formally studying computer science, being able to show, I'm a self-starter. I've been able to kind of figure things out on the ground and do real things with those skills that I've developed. And then finally, overqualified. This is a big one that we see come up and want to kind of encourage you to totally scratch the idea of overqualification from your lexicon and really think about overqualification more as a kind of failure to frame your fit. So if, I have a PhD in computer science, but I'm applying for entry-level operations roles and I'm not hearing back, maybe you just didn't make it clear of why, someone with a PhD is now applying for those roles, what your interest is, also what your skill set is. So explaining things like, I TA'd for classes and had to project manage and create full full systems around these classes. I had to apply for grants in the course of my degree, and I understand kind of the back end of the like financial management, budget management, and actually, the like grant systems, making it clear of here's how the skills I've developed in one area that might seem overqualified carry over to another. And this is another one again where I think we can talk about your particular situation in the course of, an advising session. With resumes and cover letters, I'll go through this quickly. I think the information in our written guide is going to be the most helpful there, but you want to make it clear with your resume what the impact was, not just what you did. So this is what I accomplished using these skills, not just this is what my, job description described. For cover letters, you're not just repeating your resume, you're contextualizing it. So if your resume is the what, your cover letter is the why and the how. So you're telling the story and you're telling the story of why you're a good match for the opportunity. Something I see people mess up in cover letters pretty often is they frame things too much around this is why this is a good job for me as the applicant. And you want to, again, put your hiring manager hat on and explain why you're going to be an asset for their team, why you're going to really help them to level up their work, and you're going to bring something unique that maybe other applicants wouldn't. And the kind of guiding heuristic I like for this is if someone was bad at my role, could they have written the same thing? This again is kind of shifting toward more of a what was the impact I had in my role versus what was the responsibility I had kind of mindset. With work tests and interviews, which you'll see in a lot of EA and EA ecosystem hiring processes, you want to understand the structure. This is going to look really different depending on what the role is. If it's something where you are in more of an interview setting, often it will be more of a two-way conversation where you are gauging mutual fit. And this is something where it's totally okay to actually send an email to the hiring manager and say, like, what can I expect in terms of this structure? What are the types of things that you're, evaluating here, so that you can really come in prepared. And this is a big thing too. The actual, aspect of going through a hiring process, it is a skill set unto itself that maybe does not map to the skill set needed for the role. So treating it as a skill that you need to develop and hone, and if you haven't gone through a hiring process in a while, actually prepare for. You might want to actually practice aloud. Do this by recording yourself, doing a mock interview. One thing that's really cool that you can do is actually do this with an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT. Have, put in the job description and say, can you create a work test for me? And then can you evaluate it? Can you evaluate what I've responded with? Or actually like record yourself speaking to them and get feedback. The practicing aloud part, what you have in your head, it might not come out exactly the same way once you're actually speaking. So I think that's the part where you're actually like really practicing as though you're speaking to a real person. And show why this job excites you. This might seem really basic, but the number of job applications I've seen where someone has shown no interest in the organization they've applied to or the role that they've applied for, this is like bare minimum. Like show this is actually something where, if I get a job offer, I'm going to be excited to commit to this and maybe commit to this for a while. And where possible, showing not just your answer, but the reasoning behind it. This is a way for them to understand how you think and whether or not they agree with your particular response, getting into a kind of headspace of, okay, this is like someone who's thinking in a reasonable way, who thinks the way that we want people at our organization to think. If you are hitting consistent blocks with this, so if you're not getting interviews, this can be a number of problems. This can be your actual written application materials not communicating your value. This can be that you actually need to have more relevant things that you can point to, which can be small projects. These can be volunteer opportunities you've engaged in, or maybe you just need more warm introductions. Again, most hiring is happening through networks. If you are consistently getting interviews but no offers, figuring out, okay, is there a stage I'm getting stuck at? This could be how you're presenting yourself, your communication, again, practicing the skill set of actually going through a hiring process. This could be not actually being calibrated to what the hiring organization needs and really being able to speak to that at later stages in that process. Or just not showing enough enthusiasm. Again, I've been surprised how often this comes up, but it comes up a lot. So this is again something where one-on-one advising session, we can really talk through what your particular situation has looked like here. Now, most of us at some point will be rejected, and when you are rejected, it is okay. This is in many ways a numbers game. It is normal. It is not a statement on you and your worth, or like how good of a human you are. And this again can be part of this kind of useful exercise of learning and refining your applications over time. One thing that I think is a helpful idea with this idea of like judicious ambition. So you want to aim high, but you want to aim high in a way that is thoughtful and strategic. So have a sense of, here's the opportunities where, it's a possible stretch versus ones where it feels like this is more of a solid, easier role for me to land. Now, if you are never being rejected, well, maybe you're not trying hard enough. I said this at a workshop back in the spring and got a message from someone afterward being like, "Oh my gosh, you're making me realize basically every role I've applied to, I've gotten. Maybe I should be aiming for more senior roles." Now that's an awesome position to be in, and I think this is, a sign of like, yes, you want to be calibrated with all of this, but if you aren't getting consistently rejected, yeah, maybe it's time to up your ambition a little bit. So all of this comes together toward really testing out your career hypotheses in the real world. You want to understand what your assumptions are and be testing, kind of further calibrating over time on them. Have that directional element. You are like directionally correct, even if you're not, spot on 100% of the time. And bringing that kind of scientific mindset to this process. I am collecting data from my life experience, from the real world, to understand over time what might be a better fit for me, what opportunities are out there, and being calibrated to what that fit looks like in the immediate term. So your next steps coming out of this, one is I would encourage you to just consider, like one job to explore, maybe something that you haven't thought about before, but that could actually be a really good match for you and your skills and interests. Thinking about if there's one person you want to reach out to, this weekend or after the event, and one thing that you could actually improve in your application. So with all of this, even these small steps over time are going to really compound. And this is in many ways about just like staying curious, staying consistent, and asking for help. And finally, we are here to help. So I want to encourage everyone here to consider applying for advising with our team at Probably Good. Again, very happy to describe what that like one-on-one in-depth conversation looks like and ways that we can be helpful for you. Checking out our resources. This guide, our How to Get a Job guide, if you search it on the Probably Good website, it is a long, comprehensive guide that includes many little aspects that I did not have time for today. And I think it can also just be a really helpful refresher of even things that might be familiar. And I would be super grateful if you guys would take a moment just to fill out our quick little feedback survey at that QR code. And I can also put a link to it directly in the Swapcard chat. And you can also fill it out to sign up just directly there for advising with us. And any questions, I'm monitoring the chat, so happy to answer any questions in the few minutes that we have left together. But thank you all so much again for joining the session today. And I'll put links in the chat as well to the guide that this workshop is based on, and also to where you can sign up for one-on-one advising with us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rocky, for this workshop. And yeah, let's just give the audience a few minutes to apply for advising if they want, to leave some feedback on the session. And yeah, we'll stay here. If you have additional questions, please put them as well on the Swapcard app through the live interaction bubble.
Great, thank you so much.